in Genesis chapter 26, and we'll have to see how things go. We might touch on 27, but we always just go as the Spirit leads us. We are in no race to get through Genesis. Actually, we want to take time to see what additional things are here for us in this most interesting book. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I've been really enjoying our study in Genesis. And one of the things that has been on my mind lately, a lot of Christians would just as soon get rid of the Old Testament in their Bibles and just carry the New Testament. And the reason for that is, in their minds, the New Testament, is focused on Jesus and it's focused on God's love. And, it almost seems like a different God in the Old Testament. The God of the Old Testament is vengeful and angry. And what's kind of, been on my mind lately is that to a large degree, the New Testament is a commentary on the Old Testament. Why is that? What was the version of Scripture that Jesus read, and Peter, and James and John, and Paul? What version of the Scripture did they read? No, they read the Septuagint. That's what they knew. What's the Septuagint? It is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, and it's only the Old Testament. And so when we are taught in the Gospels or in Paul's teachings or any part of the New Testament, when we're taught principles, those principles were first introduced in the Old. And we're seeing that in a lot of the passages that we're studying in the book of Genesis, that a lot of New Testament biblical principles have their foundation, have their roots in the Old Testament. That being the case, it means to be able to truly understand the New Testament, you need to have a good grasp of understanding the Old. And one of the cool things that we're doing in this Genesis study is we're going back to the beginning, right? Back to our origins. So if you turn with me to Genesis chapter 26, let's go ahead and start with our read through. Genesis chapter 6, verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land besides the previous famine in Abraham's time, and Isaac went to Abimelek, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and will give them all the lands, and through your offspring all nations on the earth will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commands, my decrees, my instructions. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of that place asked about him and his wife, he said, 'She is my sister.' Because he was afraid to say, 'She is my wife,' he thought, 'The men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, because she is beautiful.' When Isaac had been there a long time, Abimelek, king of the Philistines, looked down from a window and saw Isaac caressing his wife. So Abimelek summoned Isaac and said, 'She is really your wife. Why did you say she is your sister?' Isaac answered him, 'Because I thought I might lose my life on account of her.' Then Abimelek said, 'What is this that you have done to us? One of my men might have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us.' So Abimelek gave orders to all the people, 'Anyone who harms this man or his wife will surely be put to death.' Isaac planted crops in that land, and the same year reaped 100-fold, because the Lord blessed him. The man became rich, and his wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. He had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with earth. Then Abimelek said to Isaac, move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." So Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Isaac opened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and he gave them the same names his father had given them. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "The water is ours." So he named the well Esek, because they disputed with him. Then they dug another well, but they quarreled over that one also. So he named it Sitnah. He moved on from there and dug another well, and no one quarreled over it. And he named it Rehoboth, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land." From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham." Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. Then he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Meanwhile, Abimelek had come to him from Gerar with Ahuzath, his personal advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his forces. Isaac asked them, "Why have you come to me, since you are hostile to me and sent me away?" They answered, "We saw clearly that the Lord was with you. So we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we did not harm you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully. And now you are blessed by the Lord." Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men swore an oath to each other. But then Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. That day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. They said, "We found water." He called it Sheba, and to this day the name of the town has been Beersheba. When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri, the Hittite, and also Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. And that is Genesis chapter 26. So let's go back up to the top and start to unpack this. So now, verse 1, now there was a famine in the land. And Moses, when writing this, he wants to, put parentheses. He wants to add an additional comment. He says, besides the previous famine in Abraham's time. So he's wanting to clarify that this is a different famine, not the same one that Abraham experienced that sent him to Egypt, but a famine equal to that potentially could send Isaac out of the land of Canaan, which is something that God didn't want to happen. Why? Because he wanted Abraham and then now Isaac to be in the land of promise, or the land that God had promised him. So now there was a famine in the land besides the previous famine in Abraham's time, and Isaac went to Abimelek, king of the Philistines in Gerar. So he went further south from where he was living previously into Philistine country. Now, at this point, there is not the animosity, there is not the enemy relationship with the Philistines and Isaac's household. Later, in David's time, there's nearly continuous war between the Israelites and the Philistines, but that didn't exist yet in this time. Although what we're seeing in this chapter is the seeds of that, the origin of the animosity between the two people groups, and most likely, what we're seeing here, the origin is, it is the beginning point. It's where the fire started. Verse 2, the Lord appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live." Now, why in the world would God tell him not to leave Canaan, and to not go to Egypt. Well, it might have been something that Isaac was considering. He might have remembered what his father did during the last famine, when his father moved lock, stock, and barrel, his entire household, all of his servants and his cattle and everything to Egypt. God didn't want that to happen. He wanted Isaac to stay in the land of promise. And you recall that when Abraham left Canaan and went to Egypt because of the famine, he was moving out of God's will. He was moving out of what God wanted or what God intended for Abraham. So God doesn't want that to happen to Isaac. He wants Isaac to stay right where he's got him, where he can be the most use to him. And it's interesting the influence that Abraham had on the local people, and also now what carries forward is the influence that Isaac has on the local people, and that's much of what we see in this chapter. I think that oftentimes Isaac is considered to be sort of a weak person, or less of a strong individual, less of a great man than his father Abraham. But what we see in here is actually in this chapter is that Isaac was also a great man. And God wonderfully blessed him because he was faithful to what God had instructed him to do, just like his father. But because he was blessed, he became more powerful. Because he became more powerful, he became more of a threat to the Philistines. Verse 2, the Lord appeared to Isaac. I think that's interesting. He didn't say that he heard a voice from heaven. God actually appears to Isaac twice in this particular chapter. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt. Live in the land where I tell you to live. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. So what is going on here is that God is confirming on Isaac the same blessing that he made to his father Abraham. So God is confirming the promises he has. Now, these promises, the interesting thing was, God told Abraham that he would bless him, and he did. But he also told him that he would be the father of many nations, that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky or the sands on the sea. And that hadn't happened yet. That was something that was going to happen in the future. He told Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. That hadn't happened yet. They were still living in a foreign land. Canaan was not the land that they had come from. They were just still foreigners in a foreign land living in tents. Now Isaac, after the death of Abraham, he's in that same position. He's a foreigner living in a strange land, and he's still living in tents. The email that I sent the week before, I made the point about living in tents and camping, and that's how we're supposed to be living our lives. We're not supposed to be building permanent shelters. We're not supposed to be building permanent homes, because all this is going to burn. Everything that you can see is going to be burned over and made into the new earth and the new heaven. So we're supposed to be living in tents. We're supposed to be in temporary quarters until we're actually called home to our permanent home with God in heaven. Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. And that really didn't come to fruition until David's time, right? When David was the unifying king, he unified all the 12 tribes into one nation. And they possessed most of the land. Now, they didn't possess the land of the Philistines, but they possessed everything else in the land of Canaan that became the nation of Israel. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and all of these lands, and will give them all of these lands, and through your offsprings all nations on the earth shall be blessed. Interesting that the Hebrew can also mean all nations on the earth will use your name. So, but what God is confirming is the same blessing that he promised to Abraham, he is now promising to Isaac. And that all peoples through him, through his family, will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and did everything I required of him, keeping my commands, my decrees, and my instructions. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. Gerar is one of the Philistine city-states. And so he stayed where he was. Remember that he left where he was in, I'm going to get it wrong, Bahai Roy, where he had first put eyes on Rebekah, and he went south during this famine into Philistine territory. This is where he's going to stay. He stays put just as God instructs him to do. Verse 7. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She is my wife." He thought, the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah, because she is beautiful. I think it's really interesting that Isaac is about to repeat the sins of his father. You'll remember that when Abraham took his household to Egypt, he told the Egyptians that Sarah was his sister, not his wife. And his motivation was the same as what Isaac is talking about here. His motivation is he's afraid that he's going to be killed so that someone can take Rebekah. Sarah was beautiful. Rebekah is beautiful. But what does this say? I mean, what are we reading between the lines? What is really going on here? What is really going on here is just like his father, Isaac isn't trusting God for his safety. So he's trying to game or to do what he can to increase his own personal safety. He's worried about his own skin. He's worried that some man or men will kill him so that they can take Rebekah because she is beautiful. When the men of that place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Now, the interesting thing is that Abraham told a half lie that Sarah was his sister because they actually shared the same father. So he was telling a half truth. Where here, Isaac is telling a whole lie. He's not telling a half-truth or a half-lie. He's telling a whole lie because Rebekah is a cousin. It's not a sister. Because she is my sister, because he was afraid to say she is my wife. He thought the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah because she is beautiful. Verse 8, when Rebekah had been there when Isaac had been there a long time. So this was, not just a flash in the pan. It just wasn't the first week he was there. He had been there for a long time. Abimelek, king of the Philistines, looked down from a window and saw Isaac caressing his wife Rebekah. The Hebrew indicates, it can also mean that the two of them were playing, that they were laughing, that they were having fun with each other. The NIV translates those Hebrew passages into that Abimelek saw Isaac caressing her, and he's looking at this and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, she's no sister." Verse 9, Abimelek summoned Isaac and said, "She is really your wife." Now notice he's not asking. There's not a question mark at the end of that sentence. There's an exclamation point. He's making a statement. She is really your wife. Why did you say she is my sister? Isaac answered, because I thought I might lose my life on account of her. Then Abimelek said, what is this you have done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. I think it's interesting that, what we what we know about the Philistines is that they were idol worshippers, and they actually worshipped a god called Dagog that was represented by this half dog, half fish creature. But there was a real sense of morality here, and the king of the Philistines was worried that Isaac could have brought a curse upon his people because of what Isaac did, the lie that Isaac told, saying that Rebekah was his sister instead of his wife. Verse 10, then Abimelek said, what is this that you have done to us? One of the men might have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelek gave orders to all the people, anyone who harms this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So Abimelek, at least for the Philistine people, comes out with a decree that if you touch this man's wife, you're going to die, right? The ultimate consequence. But what it also indicates, and is not necessarily clear in the text, is that Isaac established a real friendship with Abimelek. So Abimelek didn't kick him out. He didn't send him packing like the Pharaoh did. Remember that when his father lied about Sarah, right? What did the Pharaoh do? What was his reaction? He sent Abraham packing. He gave him servants. He gave him cattle. He gave him wealth, because he didn't want Abraham's God to curse the Egyptian people. But he sent his father packing. Abimelek, because of his relationship, his friendship with Isaac, instead declares his personal protection on Isaac. So if anyone harms Isaac or his wife Rebekah, they will have me to deal with. That's what he's saying. You will have the full weight of the Philistine army upon your head if anyone should touch Isaac or Rebekah. And that's, like I said, because of his closeness, his relationship that he had with Isaac. Verse 11, so Abimelek gave orders to all the people, anyone who harms this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. So now Isaac, he's got royal protection. So what does he do? He stays put. Verse 12, Isaac planted crops in that land, and the same year reaped 100-fold, because the Lord had blessed him. So God was good to his word. He always is. He was good to his word, and he blessed Isaac right where he stood, right where he stayed, in the land of Canaan. Isaac planted crops in the land, and the same year reaped 100-fold, right? So he was wonderfully blessed with his crops, which means that translates into wealth, right? Because if your crops do well, now it says planted crops in the land the same year and reaped 100-fold. And it's likely not only did his crops do well, but his cattle, his herds did well also, which translates into wealth. Right? If you grow more than you can personally consume, you can sell, you can trade. There's commerce involved. He had so many, well, actually, I skipped verse 13. Let's go to 13. The man, Isaac, became rich, and his wealth continued to grow until he became very wealthy. He had so many flocks and herds and servants that the Philistines envied him. And this is the beginnings of the animosity between the Philistines and the Israelite people. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with water. Or filling them with earth. Filling them with earth. So what's going on here? Because they envied Isaac, they decided that they were going to push him out of the land, because water is so important in the land of Israel, right? Where Isaac is on the edge of the Negev, right? The Negev desert. So water is as valuable as gold. It's really important. And so the Philistine people, because they envied how well Isaac had done, how wealthy he had become, they started filling up the wells that his father Abraham and Abraham's servants had dug. trying to not only remove Isaac from the land, but any record of Abraham's existence too. So all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the time of his father Abraham, the Philistines stopped up, filling them with earth. 16. Then Abimelek said to Isaac, "Move away from us. You've become too powerful." I'm sorry, my friend, you have become too great. You've become too powerful. What is this? Well, Isaac had become very wealthy. In that time, one of the ways that if you were wealthy, you had either hired people to work for you or you had servants that helped you work the land. He becomes so prosperous that Isaac could have mounted his own standing army to compete with the Philistines. That's how wonderfully blessed Isaac was by God, that he'd become so wealthy, so rich, and now his holdings were so large that he could have mounted a standing army that would have competed with the Philistines. Verse 17, so Isaac moved away from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar, where he settled. Now remember, where was he? He was in Gerar. So what did he do? He moved out of Gerar proper, the city, and he moved out into the suburbs and settled in the valley of Gerar. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, because again, water is a premium. Water is life. Isaac reopened the wells that had been dug in the time of his father Abraham, which the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and he gave them the same names his father gave them. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. They're actually searching for water. Why? Because of the herds, because of the flocks. You gotta irrigate. You gotta provide water to the animals, right? So they're digging wells because there's no lakes. There's not enough rain to collect. So you gotta dig wells and find the artesian water that's below the surface. Isaac's servants dug in the valley and discovered a well of fresh water there. That is indicative of God's blessings, that they were successful. But the herders of Gerar quarreled with those of Isaac and said, "That water is ours." They made a claim on it. Wait, that's not right. You're stealing our water. For all they knew, it was another hole in an artesian well that they were drawing from. So they quarreled and they said, no, not so fast. You can't take any of that water. That water belongs to us. It's ours. So he named the well Esek, or Esek. And Esek in Hebrew means dispute. So regarding that well, Isaac was in dispute with the Philistines because they disputed him. Then they dug another well. So they moved out a little further and they dug another well. But they quarreled over that one also, right? I said, not so fast. This water is ours. You're just stealing from us. Isaac is a man of peace. He doesn't want the conflict. He, of course, wants to continue to be blessed by God. He's not going to leave the land because that's where God told him to live. But he moves out a little further. His men dig another well. And they're successful there because they're under the blessings of God. But the locals disputed. They said, not so fast. You're taking our water. And so Isaac named the well Sitnah. And Sitnah in Hebrew means opposition. And he moved on from there and he dug another well. But this time, no one quarreled about it. No one gave him any grief. And so he named the well Rehoboth. And Rehoboth means room. The word literally means room, but the implied meaning is We have found room. So now finally, Isaac has moved far enough out that the Philistine locals don't care if he finds water, if he strikes water in a well. He named it Rehoboth, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land." From there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him. Appears to him a second time. The Lord actually appears to Isaac. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you." And if God is with you, who can be against you, right? I mean, there's no greater source of power than God himself. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. Isaac built an altar there, and he called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Everywhere that they move Isaac's tents, they got to dig a well because they need water, right? Got to have water to survive. God is continuing to be faithful in his promise, his oath that he made to Abraham, and through Abraham, he is faithful to Isaac. And what does Isaac do? Takes a lesson from his father. And it's interesting that you can tell, that Isaac is thinking, well, my dad did this, I'm going to do that. My dad, when there was a famine, he left his home and he went to Egypt. And that was on his mind, and God put a kibosh on that and said, nope, don't leave the land. I want to continue to bless you. Don't move out from under my will. If you do what I'm saying, if you do what I've instructed, and if you stay here in the land that I have given you and your descendants, I will continue to bless you. Just like Abraham, his father, was an altar builder. When he put down roots, he stayed in a place. When God spoke to him, how did he react? He built an altar. What was the purpose of the altar? To worship God. Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. There he pitched his tent, and there his servants dug a well. Verse 26. Meanwhile, so scene change. Meanwhile, Abimelek had come to him from Gerar. Gerar was Abimelek's home. That's where his palace was. That was his center of power. With Ahuzath, his personal advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his forces. Now, it's interesting that Abimelek, there's three people here. Abimelek, Ahuzath, and Phicol. He brings Phicol as a show of force. Phicol was the commander of his armies. He wants to convey to Isaac how serious he is about this diplomatic visit. He brings Ahuzath, his personal advisor, because Abimelek wants two things. He wants wisdom, and he is going for an agreement. He is going for a treaty, and he wants to make sure that it's done right. So he brings with him his personal advisor and the commanders of his forces. Verse 27, Isaac asked them, "Why have you come to me, since you were hostile to me and sent me away?" Which is really kind of an interesting comment, because I think that Abimelek wasn't necessarily that hostile. He didn't say, "Get out." He just said, "You've become too powerful. You need to leave us." Okay, well, maybe he didn't just say, right? Maybe that was serious, but Isaac had taken it as a hostile act. 28, they answered, "We saw clearly that the Lord was with you. So we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we did you no harm. Or we did not harm you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully." So when Abimelek told Isaac that he had to move on, that he had become too powerful and he needed to leave, they could have just attacked him. They could have just taken all of his herds and all of his servants and all of his family and all of his wealth. They didn't do that, is what he's saying. He says, now, wait a second. Think about this, right? We allowed you to leave. We didn't harm you in any way. We're asking for a treaty that you won't harm us, and therefore we won't harm you. Again, I think it's interesting that Isaac had become so wealthy, so powerful, that he was perceived to be a potential threat to the Philistines. What do you do with another people who are a threat to you? Well, you try to find a diplomatic solution. You try and move towards an agreement, a treaty between the two parties for peace. So Abimelek is trying to be proactive because he has every indication, all of his intel is telling him that the blessings that God is giving to Isaac will only continue, meaning that Isaac will only become more powerful, not less powerful. And he doesn't want Isaac to get any bright ideas that, I'm now bigger than the Philistines. I could take anything here that I'd want. Now, that's never Isaac's objective because Isaac is a man of peace. But Abimelek is concerned that Isaac's mind might go there. And if it went there, it would be bad for Abimelek and it would be bad for the Philistine people. So he moves towards a diplomatic solution. He wants to establish a treaty with the Philistines. Again, 28. They answered, we saw clearly that the Lord was with you. So we said, there ought to be a sworn agreement between us and you. Let us make a treaty with you that you will do us no harm, just as we did not harm you, but always treated you well and sent you away peacefully. And now you are blessed by the Lord. You continue to be blessed by God. We see that. You would think that the blessings that God is bestowing on Isaac would be enough to convince the Philistine people about the reality of Jehovah. But in their minds, what they see is that Jehovah is Abraham's God. Now, Jehovah is Isaac's God. He's not the Philistines' God. But they acknowledge that God has protected Isaac and blessed him. Verse 30. Isaac then made a feast for them, and they ate and drank. Early the next morning, the men swore an oath to each other. They actually went through a formal oath-making ceremony. Then Isaac sent them on their way, and they went away peacefully. So nobody attacked anybody. They reached a treaty and agreement. They had a feast the night before to mark the oath, to exercise the oath, and then they went through an oath-making ceremony, and then they went their way peacefully. Verse 32. That day, Isaac's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. They said, we found water. He called it Sheba. And to this day, the name of the town has been Beersheba. So Sheba means oath, or it could also mean 7. There are many Hebrew words that have more than one meaning. Sheba is one of those. It means oath, or it means 7, which is rather interesting. So beer is well, and Sheba, oath. So this became known as the well of the oath. Remember when his father Abraham made a treaty with Abimelek? He did. What did Abraham do? He brought 7 ewe lambs. 7. That's why Sheba can either mean oath or 7? Abraham did that, brought the 7 ewe lambs to demonstrate his end of the deal, to demonstrate his seriousness of the oath. Beersheba, the well of the oath, or the well of 7. And then we have the last 2 verses in chapter 26, which is interesting. We now transition, it's got another scene change. We have Rebekah and Isaac sitting in their tent. The words don't say this, I'm implying. I'm saying they're sitting in their tent when they received the news. Esau, who was now 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri, the Hittite, and also Basemath, the daughter of Elon, the Hittite. What did they learn? They learned Esau, man's man, right? The outdoors guy. He thinks to himself, I need wives. He didn't say, I need a wife. He says, I need wives. And so did he come to his parents and say, I'm 40 years old now, and I think I'm finally old enough to settle down, start a family? No, he didn't do that. Remember, Esau, being the mighty hunter, he's used to providing for himself, so he goes and takes care of it. And what does he do? He marries 2 of the local Hittite girls. He doesn't come to Isaac and Rebekah. He doesn't come to them and say, Dad, would you find me a wife? Would you send a servant like your father did to the hometown in Haran? Could you send a representative there and to find a girl from our family line? He doesn't do that. And the last verse, 35, says, they were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. This upset them. Esau had married 2 of the local Hittite girls. And not just 1, but 2. And that will be the last of his wives, as we'll see in the next chapter. That was a grief to them. Why? Because he didn't keep his marriages in the family line, as Abraham had done for Isaac. Gave them no opportunity. He said, I'm ready to settle down. I'm ready to have wives. And he went and took care of it himself. Comments, thoughts before we move on to chapter 27?
Harry, I have a question about the treaty between Isaac and Abimelek. Can you tell us how long did that hold, or does that apply to like the individuals, or does that apply to your descendants, or?
Yeah, good question. So, it applies, yes, it applies to Isaac and the Philistine people, right, the 2 parties, and it lasts for as long as it lasts until something happens to break the treaty. And so the treaty would continue on through Isaac's family line until it doesn't. And that's why, we as people, as human beings, right? There's a dispute going on right now between India and Pakistan over the land of Kashmir, which has been a land of contention between the 2 countries now since the 1940s and 50s, when the state of Pakistan was created. And I don't know if you know the historical background, but basically the nation of India pushed out all the Muslims, said, you need to leave. And they pushed them out past Kashmir. And the Muslim people, the Indian people that were Muslim, established their own country called Pakistan. And the border region, the frontier between these 2 countries, Pakistan and India, is Kashmir. And it has been in contention between both countries now ever since Pakistan was formed in the 1940s, early 1950s. How long does a treaty last? It lasts until somebody breaks it. Either you negotiate for a new treaty or you take some other sort of action. Good question. All right, let's head to chapter 27, and the time we have remaining, let's go ahead and do a read-through, and then we'll start to discuss. Chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." "Here I am," he answered. Isaac said, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver, your bow, and go out to the open country and hunt for some wild game for me. Prepare for me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Now Rebekah was listening, and Isaac spoke to his son, was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die.' Now, my son, listen carefully to what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." Jacob Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Do just what I say. Go and get them for me." So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, his older brother, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you have told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so that I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. "Are you really my son Esau?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some of the wine and drink. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and wine. May nations serve you and people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He, too, prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, "My father, please sit up and eat some of my game so that you can give me your blessing." His father Isaac asked him, "Who are you?" "I am your son," he answered, "your firstborn Esau." Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who is it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, Bless me. Me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright, and now he's taking my blessing. Then he said, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what possibly can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. And you will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother, but you will grow restless. You will throw his yoke from off your neck. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. When Rebekah was told that her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry and with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word to come for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I am disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from the Hittite women like these, my life is not worth living. And that is chapter 27. All right, we only have a few minutes remaining, but let's go back up to the top and talk about this for just a moment. So Isaac is now an old man. He's actually on his deathbed. He's not going to get up from this bed. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son, here I am, he answered. Esau. Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. He knows that he's not going to be living much longer. Now, get your equipment, your quiver, your bow, and go out into the open country to hunt for some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me so that I may give you my blessing before I die. So there's a few interesting things in this. So yes, Isaac is an old man. Because of his elevated age, he's lost his eyesight, so he can no longer see. There is obviously a problem in this family. Isaac and Rebekah have a dysfunctional family. And where this dysfunction began is they allowed themselves to have favorites between the two sons. And Isaac, his favorite son was Esau. He loved that Esau was a man's man. He was a manly man. He was a great hunter. And he also enjoyed the game that Esau brought home. And evidently Esau did a good job in preparing it. He knew exactly the way that his father liked the game prepared. And because of this, Esau was Isaac's favorite son. But now you'll remember that Jacob is different, right? He's 180 degrees different than his brother. And where Esau loved to be out, he loved to be in the open spaces, he loved to be hunting, he loved to be providing for himself. Jacob, on the other hand, loved staying in tents, and he was a mama's boy, and he loved hanging around, and he loved listening to the gossip, and he loved scheming and coming up with other ideas. And now they put together the scheme of all schemes, both he and Rebekah. Verse 5, now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Isaac wanted to make this transactional. You bring me some tasty game that you have caught and prepared, and I will give you my blessing. There's two things going on here, right? So there is both the birthright and there is the blessing that is bestowed to the father, usually, or by the father, usually to the oldest son. So Jacob has already stole the birthright. What goes with the birthright? With the birthright comes all of the father's property. So that property would have included all of the land, all of the herds, all of the servants. So Jacob had already taken the birthright from Esau for the price of a bowl of red stew. Now, the only thing left for Esau, for Isaac to bestow on Esau, is his blessing. The implication is that the blessing that God gave to Abraham has been passed to Isaac, and that blessing that God confirmed on Isaac is going to be passed onto his oldest. But Rebekah remembers when the boys were born, and she was told that the younger will rule the older. She knows this. She's never forgotten it. Remember that when Jacob was born, he came out second, holding on to his brother's heel. From the womb, Jacob wanted what belonged to Esau. He's already taken the birthright, and now he's about to take the blessing. Rebekah remembers God told her when the boys were struggling inside her womb, God told her, the younger will rule the older. Does Rebekah wait to see how God is going to work that out? No, she does not. She sees an opportunity, and so she seizes on it. And she develops a plan to help Jacob steal the blessing from Esau. I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare for me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully to what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so that I can prepare some tasty meat for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Just come up with a plan on how Jacob can steal the blessing from Esau. Verse 11, Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man and I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. If I'm discovered trying to steal the blessing from Esau, I will receive not a blessing, but I'll receive a curse from my father. I don't want that. Rebekah is a smart lady. She says, "No, I've got that figured out." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. I'll take the blame. Just do what I say and get them for me." So he went and he got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Could Isaac tell the difference between young goats and game that Esau had hunted? Not once it was prepared exactly the way that Isaac liked it. All the special herbs, the special sauce, with some veggies added in there, made it into sort of a roasted roasted dinner. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, and she had that which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skin. Which, if you think about it, that indicates that Esau was one hairy dude. If Isaac could feel the pieces of goat skin, goat fur, and say, that's Esau. Esau was one hairy dude. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with goat skin. She handed it to her son Jacob, the tasty food and the bread that she had made. All right, we're going to put a pin in it for this week right here. So we stopped we finished at verse 17. We'll pick up in verse 18 next week. Don't be surprised if we go backwards to go forward, because that's our practice, to be able to keep everything in context. Any closing thoughts and comments? All right, gentlemen, please have a good rest of your week and go with God.
Thank you very much.